What I want to talk about today is this change, this redefining, this sugarcoating of what a Supersport bike is. It's been redefined by manufacturers who are setting a new standard. They're changing what a Supersport bike is. And it's the young generation that are being misled. It's the new riders who only can see what new bikes the manufacturers are putting out, and they're being misled about what a true Supersport bike is. And even worse is this old school generation who know what Supersport bikes are, but they're turning their back. So in this video I want to explain what is a Supersport, like what makes it up, why people are turning their backs, YouTubers, manufacturers, why they're turning their back, and why a lot of these reasons are invalid. So I'll dispel a lot of myths, and I want to talk about why the new Supersport don't do a full justice to what it is. You know, those who get the R7 or the R9 or the GSX-8R, they do encompass some of what a Supersport is, but I'm going to tell you what the new generation are going to miss out on when they see these bikes, and it's kind of sad. So anyway, welcome to my channel where we talk about bikes and Bible verses, and as usual at the end we're going to have a Bible verse. I hope you can watch this video to the end and get to that Bible verse, or you can just skip ahead to any part with the chapter markers that I've got in this video. So what is a Supersport and how did it become? So a Supersport is a race replica. It is a bike that is meant to be raced on the track, and that's what the RR stands for on most bikes. Some bikes don't have that, but they're still, Supersport. They are race bikes that you can use on the street, and I want to talk about why that is not a problem. It's not a problem to ride a race bike. It's a bike designed for the racetrack on the street. So what is a Supersport? A Supersport is characterized by the following things. One is clip-on handlebars and foot pegs that are high and more rearwards, and this whole setup makes you lean over the bike, right? It makes you lie over the bike. And there are tons of reasons why this makes you handle your bike better, even on the street. For one, it lowers your center of gravity. You can brake harder without doing like end over. It distributes your weight across the whole bike, particularly on the front. So it gives you more stability and grip on the front wheel. As someone like me who's been riding Supersports for years on the street, for years on a Supersport, then going to an upright naked bike, I can tell you how unnerving it is to ride an upright bike in terms of the feel of the front wheel, in terms of like traction and stability. It is unnerving. People, I don't know why people don't see that. These people who are talking down Supersport bikes, I don't know why they don't talk about this. And a lot of these people who ride these upright bikes and talk down on Supersport bikes are oblivious. They are oblivious to the lack of stability that they're having on their front wheel, and to the lack of traction. They don't see it. They don't get it. Once you ride a Supersport, then you get it. Also, in terms of cornering, a lot of people who come from Supersport to upright bike, they're like, on a Supersport you point and click. It's you point the bike where you want to go, and that's where it will go. You can shift weight way across either side. It's easy to put your body weight where you want it. That's crucial to getting the right handling. The other thing that characterizes a Supersport is fairings. It arguably makes the bike more stable, especially like at highway speeds. I'm not sure. I don't really notice the difference on that part. Supersport have high-end brakes that can be applied heavily over and over again without getting brake fade. They have high-end fully adjustable suspension, right? The key difference between a Supersport compared to regular suspension is regular suspension, right? You can make it soft, but it will be bouncy. And if you don't want it to be bouncy, you can make it hard, but it's going to be too rough, it's going to be too hard. With a Supersport, you can make it feel soft, you can make it absorb the bumps, but not have to sacrifice bounciness. So you can take it, it absorbs the bumps, but it's not bouncy at the same time. It gives you the best of both worlds because of how well it does its compression and rebound settings. That's why they're more expensive. They put high-end suspension on there. People say the suspension is made for the track. No, you can adjust it to however you want. It is just better suspension on a Supersport. A lot of Supersport bikes, including my R1, which was over 16 years old and really cheap to buy, has a separate adjustment for high speed and low speed absorption. So on the suspension, there's like a setting for when the speed is low, and there's another setting, another knob for the suspension characteristics when the speed is high. This is what you get on a 16-year-old sport bike, which probably cost a couple of $1,000. In Australia, $5,000-$6,000. In America, maybe $3,000 for a 2008 R1. The most important thing, though, that makes a bike distinctly Supersport is how the engine makes the power. So all the modern new Supersport bikes that I've explained, they have the power, the same power, but the difference is how they make their power. Because when the Supersports came out, they were made for track bikes to go into certain race classes, and they had rules for the engine sizes for those race classes. The most popular either being the 600cc or the 1000cc, and that's why a lot of Supersports are in that category. So a 600 will usually have 599cc, and a 1000cc would have like 998, 999 cc's, because they're restricted to be in that race class. So the side effect of this, this limit on the engine size is even though the engine is limited by size, they still want to be competitive, so they maximize the design of the engine for high power. Right, power is when you can maintain the torque over a higher RPM. If you can hold a good torque or decent torque for more and more RPM, you get more power. Power is a function of torque and RPM. And the way they make high-powered small engines is they make the stroke of the engine, the distance it travels up and down, shorter, and they make more cylinders. So a 4-cylinder in a 600 means the pistons are really small and light, so they can rev higher, and the shorter stroke, the shorter distance they have to go per RPM, means actually internally, even at high RPMs, the pistons aren't working that hard. They're actually moving quite slowly because they don't have much distance to travel. A typical bike with like a long stroke has to travel, like let's say a revolution is 100 milliseconds. It has to travel 150 millimeters in that 100 milliseconds. So the speed of the piston has to be fast. But if the piston is short, if the stroke is short, it only has to travel 80 millimeters in that 100 milliseconds. So its actual traveling, the piston is a lot slower, even when the RPM is high. So at 6,000 RPM, a 600cc or a Supersport bike, it's cruising, it's lazy. Internally, the pistons are being very lazy, they're just getting started. With the long stroke bikes, the engine sounds like it's going to blow up because of the inertia and the speed that the piston has to go at that RPM. Where the Supersport bikes take the hit is in the head. The valves have to move really fast, the camshafts and things like that, valve clearances, cam profiles. And the other reason it's harder on the head for a Supersport bike is because they maximize the compression ratio, and that's why you can't run regular fuel on a Supersport bike because of the high temperature and high pressure. You can't run just regular fuel. So even like on my Triumph, I've got my 675 Street Triple here, and then I had a Daytona, very similar year. The only difference really between them was the head. The block and the gearbox and everything was the same. It was just the head. They made it higher compression, and they made titanium valves and a different cam profile. That's the only difference from a Supersport and the Street Triple, and that's why the Supersport version had more torque, because the block was the same and the compression ratio was higher, so it had more torque and it could wind that torque out a lot longer. So it also had quite a fair bit more power, for the Street Triple between the Daytona. But the side effect of all this, the side effect of having this Supersport engine, high compression, high revving, is the sound and the feeling that you can't describe. Short stroke, compression ratio, more cylinders, the bumpiness at low RPM. And people talk down and say that, if you're gonna get a 600, you're gonna have to scream it to 12, 14, 16,000 RPM. You don't have to. You can enjoy the mid-range. The mid-range sounds good, 6,000, 8,000, 10,000, right? That high compression, that short stroke, it just makes the sound amazing. 6,000 RPM, 8,000, you can still feel that it's relaxed. It's not going hard, and it's just an amazing sound. And if you want, you can scream it from 12 to 16,000 RPM. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's the mid-range that has the enjoyment too. You don't just get a Supersport and say, you're not using it. You don't have to scream it. You can enjoy the mid-range. And this is what the new generation of riders are being duped on. When they buy these modern bikes, they're missing out. And I think that's just sad. I think it's sad that they miss out on such a unique component that makes a Supersport bike. But the reason for all of this, and it is a good reason, is emissions. So the reasons why manufacturers are making more relaxed engines, and they want to make power by making bigger CCs, longer strokes, because this high pressure, high temperature makes different kinds of emissions. It makes NOx, nitrous oxide emissions, which is poisonous. It makes carbon monoxide. So these sport bikes, with this high temperature, high pressure, they tend to run richer. They run the fueling is richer, so you get more carbon monoxide, right? There's more carbon, less oxygen, because it's richer. It's carbon monoxide. Whereas more leaner ones allow it to become carbon dioxide, which is not a problem. There's no problem with CO2 greenhouse gases for motorcycles, because and that's why manufacturers make the bikes bigger to comply with emissions, because it's more relaxed. It can be more leaner. It can produce carbon dioxide and not carbon monoxide, and also less NOx emissions as well. Also, what you get with Supersport bikes is hydrocarbons. That's the fuel, unburnt fuel coming out the back. So the new emissions laws don't allow that. And that cool popping that you get out of exhaust, that is actually that actually serves an environmental purpose. If you see, a lot of bikes have a cold air attached to the exhaust, so that is so that when the fumes are coming out of the exhaust, it pumps cold air, it mixes cold air with it, so that if there's any fuel left, unburnt fuel, that cold air would want to make that fuel ignite, and that's where you get that throwing of flames and popping. It's they want to burn off the fuel, essentially unburnt fuel that's coming out of the exhaust, because they don't want fuel coming out from the exhaust and going into the environment. And the last thing I want to talk about, which is the elephant in the room, which I want to address completely, is comfort. I've heard people say that the ergonomics are extreme, it's insane, or it's stupid, it makes no sense for the street. This is all garbage. The only time when the Supersport is awkward than the upright bike is at stall speeds, like speeds of 0 to 10 kilometers, or 0 to 6 miles. That is the only time where it's awkward. Anything more than that, right? Anything over 10 kilometers an hour, I actually find Supersport is more comfortable. I only do that 0 to 10 kilometers makes up like 1% of my riding, or maybe 5%, depend. And I commute every day in peak hour traffic, mostly highway, but you know, there are a few sets of lights, and it's mainly just getting out of the parking that makes it more awkward. But everything else is, I believe, is more comfortable. A Supersport is more comfortable, right? People say you can't ride for more than 2 hours on a Supersport, right? But you can't ride that much on an upright bike. You can't even really sit in the car in one position for that long without needing to, you know, stretch. An upright bike puts more weight. It concentrates the weight on your butt, which makes your butt sore. It makes my butt sore, right? A Supersport doesn't do that because the weight is distributed across, you know, it's across its hands, legs, butt. It's distributed, and you can shift your weight easier to relieve different parts. On an upright bike, the bumps are fully taken through the discs in your back, right? A Supersport, your back is in a healthy position, you know. It's in like the arched back, more horizontal. No one talks about this. No one talks about how the Supersport is more comfortable. No YouTuber. They all just mindlessly follow and repeat the same thing. And actually, that wasn't the last thing I want to talk about. The last thing I want to talk about is safety and the criticism that Supersport bikes are not safe because people ride them fast and they crash. The first thing I want to say about this is that all motorcycles are inherently dangerous. So don't build a false sense of security just because you're not on a sport bike, right? That you're more safer. There is a statistic that I read that said that most motorcycle deaths happen at around 60 kilometers an hour. Now that's probably because you know, the conditions at 60k, which is I think 40 miles, the conditions, there's more traffic, more intersections, and more people ride. So let's say 80% of people ride in 60 kilometer zones, like suburban zones, right? So even if you're 4 times more likely to crash at the high speeds, you still get more like crashes at the 60 kilometers just because there's more people there. Like there's just a lot more riders there. So statistics sort of points that out. And I find it hypocritical that people give lectures about how dangerous 600s are, 600 Supersports are, and they're riding around on like 12 KTM 1290 or KTM 890, you know. People talk about 600 Supersport, but they don't say nothing about the Z900, and I think that is hypocritical. Hyper nakeds are way faster. So anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about. I just want to end with a Bible verse, and that's from James chapter 3, starting from verse 13, and it says, "Whoever is wise and has understanding is known by good conduct, and he shows that he's humble and has wisdom. But if you have bitter and jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart, don't boast or talk about these, but it's earthly, unspiritual, and demonic." There's a lot of bitterness, a lot of jealousy, a lot of selfishness, and it's saying here that these things are earthly and unspiritual and demonic. And it says wherever there's jealousy and selfish ambitions, there is disorder and every vile practice. So evil comes, evil grows. This is the growing ground, you know. Selfish ambition, jealousy, it grows disorder and vile evil practices. But wisdom comes from above, is pure and peaceable and gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits. So I just want to encourage everyone today to take these words. Like, the world is in a mess, and it's because of these simple things. So anyway, I hope you gain something from my content, my information I'm providing about Supersports. I hope people really can appreciate what Supersport bikes are, you know, how cool they are, how fun they are. So yeah, that's all I want to talk about today. If you like this video, please give it a like. please add a comment if you like my content in general. I've got 2 playlists. I've got the motorcycle one, and I've got my other playlist called the Light Path, which talks about more like godly insights and things like that. So if you enjoy that kind of stuff, please look out for that playlist and subscribe to my channel, and take it easy and ride safe.